Hey folks, today we're going to try tying a Polar Fibre Minnow. Polar Fibre is a product that is carried by Just Add H2O. It's very similar to craft fur, but I personally find it a lot more manageable. So I'm just going to get some of this out. Only started tying these minnows in the last couple of years, and my thoughts on them are it's almost like the Mickey fin of flies. It's good for everything. Anything that eats other fish, this has been a really good pattern for. Alright, so we'll get right to it. Today we're going to be doing a reverse tie method. So I use a toothbrush, but a brush is also good. But you got to be able to comb out those fibers. There's not a lot of smaller underfur in this. It's a synthetic fiber, but there is some, so you want to pick that out. And basically, the first part here, we're going to be tying in the tail, but we don't want to tie in that tail further than where the top section of the belly is going to go. So take a mental note of where this ends from up here. Then we come back here and adjust accordingly. So right about there, just clip that off. I haven't actually tied one of these in a long time, so it should be interesting to see how this goes. So you notice we tie it forward. This is called reverse tying. Bring that back again and tie it like that, and that just secures it in place, plus it bulks it up around the body a little bit. And you could even put a little spot of head cement on that, and all that's going to do is just secure it a little bit. Jeez. All right. So we're going to come up here, and I like using a little bit of ice dubbing up around this area. First, before we put a bit of ice dubbing on, we're going to wax our thread. And that will help the ice dubbing attach to that. My hands are a little jittery this morning. I drank a lot of coffee. Leave yourself room at the top of the hook to work around there. And all this is just a little bit something extra, you know, to maybe catch their eye a little bit. You don't need to use this. But by creating this bump in the middle of the shaft, you also have, I don't have my dubbing brush with me. That's it, I'll use this. But by creating this bump, it creates almost like a little, I guess, ramp, and then when your fur in the front comes flowing over this, it'll expand out a little bit and create a little more girth to the body. This Polar Fibre has amazing action in the water. So what we're going to do now is tie in the belly portion. You want a little bit more fur for this. These patterns have been awesome for springtime brook trout, bass when I fish down in Ontario. So you want to make sure you're coming close to where this is there. So roughly tie in there. Basically any species that eats other fish, which are most of them when they get a certain size. Oh jeez, come on. Alright, so we're gonna just split this. And just kind of leave it there, split like that, so it's easier to bring back when we need to. Alright, so tying in the top section, we need to look at, so I'm going to put 2 colors in the top section, and it's going to be red and green, because I thought those would be 2 good colors, kind of like a rainbow trout look to it. So whatever you tie in first is ultimately going to be what's on top. So like a lot, I've even made this mistake. I would tie in what I think's in the middle, because I'm not looking at it as a reverse tie, and then when I flip it over, I'm like, oh nuts, you know, I got the red on top. So just remember, whatever you tie in first at this point is going to be what is on the top of the back of the minnow when it all comes together. So we're going to use olive for that. Again, we're still using Polar Fibre. Stuff has amazing action in the water. And that was hard to cut because I just cut off some of the base material there. So anyway, pick out some of that under fur. The stuff is messy. Tie that in. Off your excess fur. Now we're going to put in a little bit of red, and we're going to throw in a little bit of flash as well with that red. You can certainly overdo it with flash. I recommend using a small amount. We'll show you that in a second. So you want this to match the length of your top, or a little bit shorter, as we got here. This stuff is also H2O product. It's called Fish Scale. It's got a really nice reflecting material used in it. It uses some crystal flash and a blend with some reflective fibers. I love it. Pretty much all I use on these minnows, actually. So you're going to try to follow the same length as you did with the red here, roughly. Oh, geez. All right. So, how many times has that happened to everybody? I don't have a threader at my table, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Perfect. Going to come up over this. Oh, yeah. Got a mess now. But you know what? We should be able to come back from stuff like this. So you know, it's not a bad thing that's happened in the video. All right, beat that split. Basically, you want to line everything up to come down across. I'm going to put a little bit of head cement in here. And we kind of have our ball of ice dubbing is covered up a bit. So I'm just going to trim that a little bit. Because when it gets wet, you may not see it at the end of this video, but when this fly gets wet, you will see that. All right, so for this part, I had something here for that. Where did I put it? Oh, here we go. So, if you have a wife or a girlfriend, or if you're a female tyer, you probably have these clips for your hair. The small ones are excellent for this work. Basically, you're going to want to bring this all back, and then you're going to want to clip it in. So we'll do that now. First one I do is the bottom, like that, and just kind of hold it with my fingers. And then I bring the top over. And just have a look on both sides there. That's good. And just kind of clip this around and hit it, get it to grasp around your hook as well, and that should hold it in place. Bring this forward and bring this around the eye. So that's that part. We'll brush this all out later on. It'll look pretty. Pretty much since I've been tying these bait fish, and not a big resin guy, I'm not good at using it yet. But this stuff, I mean, it makes it so much easier. Basically, it's a pre-formed head, and it's what you would actually form with UV resin, but it's just done for you. So we're still going to use some UV here today, but this makes the process a lot easier, especially if you're like me and you find UV a bit intimidating. Kind of worried about this front of my fly. Actually, it's bulked up a little bit more than I like, and I'm worried that this thing is not going to fit on that well, but we're going to force it. Oh yeah. Oh, that'll go on. That's not bad. So you just slip it over the eye of your hook, and that's how it goes on. You're going to build this up a bit to keep it on. Basically, the front of these are slots. It's not like a circle hole, it's a slot, so it fits nice over these straight eye hooks. But once you build it up a bit where it's like a slot, it'll hold it on. All right, we're going to tie off. Now, that is, I've tied nicer ones, but this one will do. So, usually we do this at the end, but sometimes I just want to give it a little brush. That's how it's going to look basically when it's swimming in the water. Today we're going to use the fish skull living eyes. Can you guys hear the wind outside? Man, it is howling here. So before I put these eyes on, I usually, they're self-adhesive, but I like to kind of overdo things. Put a little bit of dab of, this is Loctite, but you can use like any kind of fly tying crazy glue, it's all the same, you know. Put that eye on, and I just use my fingernail to hold it in for a second. I cut my fingernails this morning, I shouldn't have. And then I put this eye on. Oh, I'm gonna put some of the, hold it down with my fingernail for a couple seconds. How much easier is that than using resin? So, in the spirit of overdoing things, I'm going to do two things now that you probably don't need to do, but I do it anyway. So here I got Solres thick resin. I'm going to come in around the eye, and you're just kind of filling those gaps up and around this eye, and kind of putting a protective layer on it so it doesn't fall off. Got my UV light. Has anybody used these before? This thing is awesome. It's rechargeable, plugs into a USB, no more batteries, so just plug it in and it lets me know when it's getting low, and it's super powerful. I love this light. If you get a chance to pick one up, I highly recommend it. These are just so cool, really good. Make sure that's good and cured. I'd rather go too much light than not enough. Okay, come over the other side. Do this. Oh, this side doesn't have as good a presentation as the other side. It should have been looking a little bit better. It's alright, we'll comb that out. And you can really see that ice stubbing underneath lighten up, and you know, I'm a huge fan of UV products, especially with salmonids. It's been studied that salmonids, like including brook trout and stuff, they all respond very well to UV. So if it doesn't work, there's no harm, no foul, but I like to take any advantage I can get. Alright, so this side's going to bug me until I fix it. Considering that's the side you guys got to look at. Alright, there's one other trick that I do with these, and so I was talking about this slot in the front. Now, right now there's a little bit of void between the fur and the front of this prefab head on the inside there. So there's still a little bit of a hole off to one side. I actually put the nozzle in, and I'll fill that up with head cement, and I mean, when that dries, it just holds everything in place so well. Oh, maybe I won't be able to get this side. No, I don't think I will. But it holds everything in place so well that yeah, I've been doing that for a few years, and it's been really good. One more little trick too is when you're using UV, you can use rubbing alcohol too, but I have this at hand, but I just put a little bit of this crazy glue over the UV, and it gets rid of that tackiness. If anybody works with UV, they'll tell you that. I really don't care what product you're using, there's always some level of tackiness with it afterwards, and it gets really sticky. When this Polar Fibre gets into it, it's really nasty. It just destroys your fly. So yeah, that's it. That's the Polar Fibre Minnow, and there's so many different colors and combinations, and I mean, it's like deer hair. You can have a lot of room for creativity, which we're really big on. I hope this helps. Thank you very much for watching.